right. Good morning, everyone. Sorry, good evening, everyone. I'm delighted to welcome you all to this inaugural session of our series, Transforming Cultural Narrative. And it's 8 p.m. here in Bangladesh. And we are gathered for what promises to be an enlightening discussion of the Bangladeshi liberation movements. And we're launching this series in August, a month that holds profound significance in our national history. So this is the month that echoes that struggles and sacrifices of countless individuals, including students and workers, who bravely faced and fought against the oppressive force in broad daylight. And their sacrifice led to the emergence of a new government and interim administration, which has recently taken their office. And while the presence of young representative brings a sense of cautious optimism, Bangladesh must continue to navigate the challenges ahead to fully realize the vast potential to reform, an opportunity that truly comes once in a generation. So this moment in our history feels reminiscent of the time when our nation gained independence from Pakistan and became a sovereign Bangladesh. In this spirit of transformation we began this program, aptly titled Transforming Cultural Narratives. The narratives we explore tonight are not just stories of the past, they are the lenses through which we view our identity and chart our future. Now, please allow me to introduce myself. I'm Imamur Hossain. I'm an assistant professor of architecture at Sonargaon University here in Dhaka. And it's an honor to host this session. I'm especially proud that this event is a collaboration between three distinguished platforms, each dedicated to academic and intellectual explorations. So first, we have Global Bangladesh, a platform created by Bangladeshi diaspora, and their mission is to build cultural and intellectual bridges between Bangladesh and its global communities, sharing experiences and achievements that contribute to our nation's ongoing narrative. And we are in online. And we are fortunate to have Professor Sadiqul Islam here with us today. He's the executive editor and a professor of economics at Laurentian University in Canada. And next is Knowledge is Without Borders, a platform that is focused on inspiring critical thinking in academic discourses, particularly among young minds, while also serving as a publishing house here in Dhaka. So their work is crucial in fostering intellectual growth and exploration through a non-profit-oriented volunteer research activity. And Dr. Toslim Shakur, he is also the coordinator of Knowledge is Without Borders. And lastly, we have the International Center for Development and Environmental Studies, ICDES, which has a 19-year legacy in conducting development and environmental research on a global scale. Now based at Sonargaon University in Dhaka, I have the privilege of serving here as the coordinator for their operation here in Bangladesh. But unfortunately, Dr. Mahfuzul Haq sir couldn't be present here today with us, who is the director of ICDES, and he's also the founding member, one of the founding members of Knowledge is Without Borders. So without further delay, I would like to pass the floor to Dr. Toslim Shakur, who will introduce Dr. Qayyum Khan now and lead us to the main segment of our program. Off to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Imamur. You made a wonderful start as a youngster architect planner from Sonargaon University. And it is my great pleasure to introduce today's first session, which Dr. Qayyum Khan, who, as you know, is the author of this book, of this wonderful book of Bittersweet Victory, Freedom from Fighter's Tale, published by UPL in 2013. Now, before we start with, I'm doing a bit unconventional way of welcoming Dr. Khan. If you could please introduce yourself from as a young university student in the 70s, you're going to the freedom fight, then come back victorious on 16 December. And then after 10 years working in army, you go for higher studies in America, having had the PhD and academic life for another 10 for 20 years. You returned back to Dhaka as a sort of a semi-middle-aged man, being a bigger entrepreneur, and finally retired for us. Just to add, before coming here, you did meet me at Sheffield University in the late 80s, early 90s, and I had a wonderful interview, probably first interview from you with there. And I understand you said you took some points from there and then wrote. So all this rational to the writing of this book. Over to you, sir, Dr. Qayyum Khan.
Thank you. What do I say about myself? Dr. Shakur and I, we are contemporaries. We finished HSC in the same year, and that we entered university in 1970. I was studying, or I got admitted myself in the Department of Physics, Dhaka University. And then came 25th March, and the horrific experience of living through that 48 hours convinced me that we Bengali young men, we are dead. We are dead no matter what. Even if we stay at home, we are dead. If we go out, we can be killed. We can be killed anywhere, and nobody has to account for our death or answer for our death. The only way to survive is to fight. And I really had that feeling. And with that feeling, I decided that I will go. By the time Ziaur Rahman's announcement came on the radio, so we did find out that there was resistance and there was a liberation war in the making that required volunteers, and I volunteered to fight. And so after the war, I served in the army for 10 years. In 1981, I left the army and I went to the US, and I ended up with a PhD in finance. And you are all academics here. I too have been an academic. I taught finance at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. And then I returned back to the country. And I headed a French multinational company as operation in Bangladesh. And so I've had basically three different careers: the military, the academia, and the private sector. So that's, I think, enough about myself. Thank you.
Wonderful. The only thing missing is what is the rationale for this book writing 10 years after coming back from America?
Well,
or maybe 20 years.
think,
in total, you wrote this book 41 years after.
Yes, that's correct. And there are a couple of reasons. The first was that when I was in America, I didn't follow the Bangladesh newspapers or what is being discussed in Bangladesh. I lived in America. My research was on American financial markets. Very little to do with Bangladesh. Bangladesh was all family. And then when I came back and I started reading newspapers, listening to talk shows in television, going to certain cultural events, and I was surprised by what was being discussed as discussions on the liberation war. Or they were supposedly discussing the liberation war. While I was listening to these discussions, I did not recognize the liberation war. What liberation war was that? How come I missed it? Was a question that I asked myself. So I thought that record needed to be corrected. The second one was by the 90s, my son was in his, he was born in 78. So he was in university, and he was in university. My nieces were also in university graduating, and they kept on asking me one or two questions about the liberation war. And so I thought, you can't explain the liberation war in 5 minutes. So I think I wrote the book. One objective was to, straighten the record that this is not what it is. I'm a freedom fighter. I was commissioned in the army during the Liberation War, and this is my story. And the second was that I really wanted to tell our children what we did. And so with those two intent, I wrote the book. It's not that I was planning to write a book. And now in trying to write a book, I had to do some research because I was a very small man in the Liberation War. I was a 20-year-old. So I was a foot soldier. So I was not aware of many of the political developments, the international situation, which I had to find out through research. So I've incorporated that discussion in the book.
Thank you. Yeah, that's an excellent start because people will understand now. There's a lot of things, and I thought the book has got. You can see my review later, maybe in a one-page one, but we have not shown you now, and you will tell me how do I differ with you. Now let's get into the book straight. First of all, let's come to it. It's very neatly tucked into 8 very neat chapters, and because of there are more fireworks coming in the latest chapters, so I will probably go a bit briskly with the first 3 chapters, but spend more time in the last 3-4 chapters. So start with your first chapter, East Pakistan. And here, if you kindly briefly explain the phenomena between 47 and 71, including a bit of Muslim League and JLG and Awami League, please.
Okay. I think throughout the book, the perspective that I wanted to convey was I wanted to carry the reader through that period of time that I traversed and what I saw and what I experienced. And in trying to decide how did the Liberation War started? Liberation War, in my view, started with the creation of East Pakistan. Because, and in that chapter, there's a discussion when my father is working in Karachi, and we are a young family. My sister and I, we started school in Karachi. And the small interactions that children have with neighbors and friends, and, the certain epithets, Bengali machli khata, somehow it's machli is not real food. The real food is gosh, and Bengali machli khata. And my mother at that time, she always wore a sari, and she would use a teep. And neighbors asked us, "What does your mother use a teep? Is she a Hindu?" So these are the, even as a small child, you felt the denigration. You felt the denigration. So I wanted to convey that experience that in Pakistan, you couldn't escape it if you were a Bengali. And then I described my life in Dhaka as a schoolboy. I went to which is now a very big school in Dhaka, residential model school, which is now college. At that time, it was called a school. It was a very different school at that time. It only had about 300 students and such a huge campus. Everybody stayed in the school. And it was unique in the sense that we had very little homework. Whatever academics we did it in the classroom. After school hours, it was all extracurricular activities. The most important thing was sport.
If I may just interject, because I'm just concerned about many more important questions coming. We'll come back to your background maybe a little later to that, but can we talk briefly about Muslim League, Awami League, and JSD's
Okay, I think my introduction to political issues took place in my school. Not the normal way that I started school, but my school had sons of many politicians. We had the son of Ataur Rahman Khan. We had the sons of Khaja Khairuddin. We had Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's son. And we had the sons of Mushiur Rahman. So when their boys, discussing with these boys, I heard about what was happening. Fatima Jinnah's election, and Mujib was the chief election agent for Fatima Jinnah in East Pakistan. And Fatima Jinnah defeated Ayub Khan in East Pakistan.
Extraordinary.
So,
Extraordinary.
so these were my introduction to politics. And then, you know, by 1969, when I entered college, the student movement against the Agartala conspiracy case started that brought down Ayub Khan. And that was a terrific experience. I was in Notre Dame College at that time. And I actually participated in many of the demonstrations that took place. Although the center of the unrest was Dhaka University, but every day from Notre Dame, we'd go to Dhaka University and join with the university students to participate in the. And by end of 1969, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was released from prison. And thereafter, the demand for election, and the election was forthcoming. And, you know, we got like many students, not that we were going with people to ask, vote for Awami League. We had done all of that.
Okay, well, you very nicely answered my third question already for the impending storm. Or I did call it, was it the eye of the storm in your chapter 3? So let's come to your chapter 3.
Eye of the storm? Well, Dhaka was the eye of the storm. So
That's
yes, Dhaka was the eye of the storm. It could, the chapter could be, I think in that chapter, I was trying to show two parallel sequence of events. One was what was happening with the population of East Pakistan, what the people were doing, what the politicians were doing. And the other was how the Pakistan army was getting ready for a showdown.
Excellent. Now let's come to the genocide section chapter. Your experience of 25th March.
Well, 25th March was horrendous. It was an absolute horrendous. I had never, we knew that police had occasionally fired on demonstrations. 52 was an example, but we had never experienced it. It is only on that night there was continuous automatic weapons fire, constant rattling of automatic fire, big booms of, heavier weapons. The amber light from setting thatch along the route from the cantonment to the city on both sides, Karan Bazar, Nakhalpara, University, they were all set on fire. I mean, talk about terrorizing the population with weapons, with military might. So it was horrendous. And it is on that, what I mentioned earlier, it was at that time, living through that night, I was convinced I had to go and fight.
Excellent. I mean, now that brings it very squarely to chapter 4, the Mukti Bahini, your journey to India, and in a little still coming back to Dhaka at the time. I don't know whether it's here or another time. You came back to Dhaka for a short period and then went back again, didn't you?
Yes.
Can you explain that thing? So you're joining of Mukti Bahini and sneaking back to Dhaka very dangerously, I thought, to meet you with friends and others.
Well, I mean, as I said, I had made up my mind to join the Mukti Bahini or join the resistance movement or the movement for Bangladesh. Hello, can you?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so the movement for Bangladesh, but how do we go? Where do we go? So it required a little bit of digging. Where are the freedom fighters? Where to go? Where are they taking recruits? So one of our friends, and Taslim, you may know him, Ali Ahmed Ziauddin.
Of course.
Zia had already gone to Brahmanbaria and found out about Major Khalid Musharraf and for East Bengal. And he came back to Dhaka and he said that he had come back to take more volunteers for the Mukti Bahini. So we tied up with Zia.
He was the escort.
And-
Was he?
Huh?
He was the escort.
He was everything. He was our friend, philosopher, and guide. He knew what to do. We didn't. And he knew what to do. So I think 5 of us plus Zia, 6 of us, we went. It was a journey I'll never forget. We started by bus from Hatkhola, and we took small legs, went each time changing transportation. Sometimes we were on the bus, sometimes we were on a baby taxi, sometimes we were on a rickshaw, sometimes on a boat. We never used how most people go, the major transportation system. Anyway, to cut the long story short, we ended up in a place called, on the Dhaka-Kumilla highway, there's a place called Chandina Bazar. From Chandina Bazar, we headed eastwards, and the next morning we reached a place in India called Motinagar, Tripura, India. Along the way, once we entered the village, actually some villagers sheltered us, gave us accommodation for the night, gave us food. And next morning we joined, and for the first time in that period, I saw armed Bengali men with uniform getting ready to fight, 4 Bengal soldiers. It made me feel so good that we have trained soldiers who can fight.
Super.
And
Super. I said super.
it was such a morale booster. You have to feel it. I can't explain it to you.
I can well guess.
And then, life in the Mukti Bahini started, which means the first night there was a organization called the Dhaka Platoon. I was made part of the Dhaka Platoon. The Dhaka Platoon had a tent. It's not even a tent. It was a trampoline pitched on 2 bamboo poles. So about 20 of us slept in that tent. My first meal in the Mukti Bahini, which was rice and some vegetables and whatever it was. And there was a lot of little pebbles in the rice. But all these hardships was okay. Nobody complained, nobody minded. We expected it to be this way, and that's the way it was.
Right.
And there were a lot of young men there. So while we were there, one day Khalid Musharraf came and met us and gave us a little speech. And his speech was very inspiring. After that speech, there was a little bit of concern that a lot of these army officers who left their families in Dhaka, that Pakistan army would take their wife or members of their family as hostage. So,
wow.
So if they were taken hostage, then the liberation war would, go in it, and they did take some people as hostage. So I was asked that if I could go back to Dhaka to bring back some of these family members, and I did. I was tasked to bring 3 families. I could only bring 1, the family of Major Shafaat Jamil. And then at that time, Shafaat Jamil, who was a 4 Bengal officer, was given the responsibility to take over command of 3rd East Bengal, which was in Dinajpur, Balurghat, West Dinajpur. So he had already left. So
what a brave job you did at such a young age, Deepu.
Huh?
What a brave job you did.
It's a job that needed to be done. That the Mukti Bahini is actually, when you're doing the job, you've been given a task. If you can do it, then the task moves ahead. If you can't do it, somebody else will have to do it. So
Okay,
I
now
think
let's get to
that's the
Murthy
way
now.
we.
Should we go to
So
Murthy?
yeah, from Third Bengal, I was selected to join the Bangladesh Army. Had by the time started reorganizing. A decision was made what will be the structure of the Liberation Army. And the government, the Mujibnagar government, decided that to fight, they needed young leaders. So they were going to select some people, send them for military training so that they can become military leaders. I was selected. The most of the people in our group were, urban students, mainly from Dhaka, Chittagong, Sylhet, Barisal. A total of 60 of us, and we were sent to Murthy. Murthy is in northwest Bengal, north of Jalpaiguri, very near the Bhutan border in the Himalayan foothills. And we spent 15 weeks there, and we received very rigorous, very physically challenging, very hard training. We trained day and night. We trained during the day. We went out for exercises at night. It rained very heavily, and the training was very hard, but we survived.
Now, I will interject here. What I like about this chapter, while you discuss this rigorous training, you also sprinkled it with some political talking, like Brigadier Sheikh Tajuddin, Raw, Mujib Bahini, Sheikh Mujib, Indira Gandhi, and Manik Shah, US Alliance. So I'm sorry, I put here a melting pot of this. You pick and cherry pick whatever you want to talk about this.
No.
As a backdrop,
I want to give you the right person. As we were going through training, there was things happening all over the place. Okay, there were things happening within the government. There was things happening within the Indian government, the Indian army, the Bangladesh political party. There was, for example, even within the political Awami League, not everybody accepted Tajuddin Ahmed's leadership. The younger leaders of Awami League under Sheikh Muni, they wanted to run a parallel government. They even attempted to kill Mr. Tajuddin. And so I mention all of those things as they happened chronologically. The Sheikh Fazlul Haq Muni, without the approval of the Mujibnagar government, in direct contact with the RAW, established Mujib Bahini. And Mujib Bahini, the recruits for the Mujib Bahini were the students of Chhatra League. At that time, there was no Jubo League. There was only Chhatra League. Okay. So these were a bunch of pampered political elite youth.
Brats, rather brats.
Huh?
Brats.
I'm being diplomatic.
Sorry.
I'm being diplomatic. Huh? I'm being diplomatic. So
you don't have to debut. Please carry on what you want to say.
And they were trained in Dehradun, which is in Himachal Pradesh. Okay, far away from Bangladesh. I don't have any idea what they did there. They became, later on I find out he was a trainer. What did you train? What would you train? What do you know about fighting? So those are my questions. But anyway, it is only later in the sector I found out that what a nuisance they were. And there was a situation when Mukti Bahini and Mujib Bahini had many clashes. And eventually, General Arora had to step in and, limit the areas of operation. So what Mujib Bahini eventually was, it was a private army of Sheikh Muni. And I think really, why was the Mujib Bahini created? Mujib Bahini was created primarily as an insurance policy that should the Awami League government fail, or if the liberation war, the leadership of the liberation war slips away from the Awami League, then the Mujib Bahini would start a whole bunch of assassinations.
Right.
And that was its main task.
Now that takes us squarely to the firefighting sort of firework place in chapter 6, sector 7, your entry.
That is actually the chapter where I'm actually now fighting and leading men to war. And that chapter describes that how a raw, young second lieutenant, 20-year-old, has been given charge of 150 men to lead them into battle and how I handle my responsibilities. I will say that in Sector 7, there is a lot of reference to my commander, Captain Mohiuddin Jahangir. And Jahangir was an engineer's officer who escaped from Pakistan to join the Liberation War. And he was an extremely dedicated freedom fighter. He slept and dreamt the liberation of Bangladesh. For all his waking hours, that's what he did. To give you an example of how dedicated Jahangir was, we received an allowance. Okay, we received an allowance for a captain and below officers of the rank up to the rank of captain. We received 400 Indian rupees a month. And there was nowhere to spend it. Sometimes I go out here and there. The book has anecdotes of what I did. But Jahangir kept a little bit of money, about 20 to 30 rupees for toothpaste, soap, etc. And the remaining money, he gave it amongst 3 or 4 families in the refugee camp.
Oh my goodness.
So he was a very dedicated person. And he was a fearless man, a fearless leader. He would never ask his men to do anything in battle that he could not do himself or would not do himself. And he led by example. But that doesn't mean automatic success. Battles are, I think our first success in battle is in our 3rd attempt. The first 2 attempts, we go and we fail.
Okay, can I just include the name of our 2 Rajshahi Cadet College friends, Bazlur Rashid and Saifullah? They defected from PMA to join you. A bit on that?
Yes. Saifullah and Bazlur Rashid, they were in PMA. They escaped from PMA and to join the Liberation War. Just think about their dedication to Bangladesh. They came. Bazlur Rashid, unfortunately, a couple of years ago, passed away out of a cardiac arrest. And Saifullah is still alive. He's retired. He spent most of his professional life. He got a PhD in economics and worked for the FAO. And he lives in Rome.
And
occasionally comes to Dhaka, and we meet him. He's a superb guy. He's an absolutely superb guy. And so Bazlur Rashid came to my subsector, and Saifullah went to another subsector. So I didn't see him during the war. He was in Dinajpur, I was in Chapai-Nawabganj. Bazlur Rashid and I participated in 2 or 3 operations together. And in our last battle, the Battle of Chapai-Nawabganj, Bazlur Rashid was intimately involved in that battle.
Excellent. So now comes the crux of the book, chapter 7, the bitter sweet victory. Or should I say anticlimax?
The bittersweetness could be interchangeably used as anticlimax, I suppose. But I think, the time that we were fighting, we were always talking to our fellow soldiers. And, besides work when you had time to talk, the one subject that dominated was Desh Shadin hole ki hobe.
Okay.
This was in everybody's mind. Desh Shadin hole ki hobe. And you heard everybody's aspirations. And one thing that was very clear, nobody wanted financial rewards.
Really?
No, huh?
Really?
Nobody wanted financial rewards. These were, most of them were boys from the village. They said, if somehow I can repair my home, and there were students who said we would want to go back to college, finish our education, get on with our lives. And, you know, they were, for what was amazing, they were not going to take advantage of privilege in pursuit of privilege.
Okay. Now let me give you some figures.
And that was, no, I'm coming to so this was a sweet aspiration. Side by side, all these Mujib Bahini boys came, you could see their attire. You know, they had the jackets, the trousers, the boots, you know, flashy guns. They came to the city, they were driving hijacked vehicles. They were going to this house, that house, and they were looting. And they were looting. And, you know, we just stood there and watched it happen.
Interestingly, I also read that
I give you many examples of what I saw, what I observed. Because of paucity of time, I will not go into that. But you will find it.
It's a jam-packed section, and I've got some queries. Number one, I like about the IAS and IPS Indian officers wanted to take over the Bangladesh Civil and Police Service, which they could not. That I found very interesting. Could you explain that, please?
I think, yes. I think, you know, a situation like a war, I mean, even within the government of India, each department creates its own inertia. I couldn't find any verification that this was a political decision. That Indira Gandhi had made the decision to send these officers. No, I could not find that. But there were police officers and civil service of Indian administration service officers who had come in with the Indian army, and they expected to become, I was in Rajshahi. There were two guys hanging around with the Indian army. One guy was trying to be the DC, the other guy the SP. But there was no government order. And the Indian brigade commander asked my sector commander, Colonel Zaman, that, you know, we have these officers. Why don't you help them take this responsibility? And Colonel Zaman made it very clear that how can you tell me to do this? If a DC and SP of Rajshahi is the job of Bangladesh government, and if the Bangladesh government doesn't appoint them as DC and SP, and how can be DC and SP in Bangladesh? They're Indian officers. We have our own officers. So,
Brilliant. Now the other thing,
so I think it is also very significant that immediately after the war, even for those of us who were, you know, Indian Army officers and us, we were allies, there were little stresses like that. These stresses were beginning to appear.
Now, from Army perspective, you mentioned seriously about lack of preparation for armed guerrilla warfare, unlike Cuba. You know, what is your rationale for that, please? You said that
I have in Dhaka, in many discussions, I have made a point, and I make it here as well. The Army League did not know how to conduct a revolutionary war, and had no preparedness to conduct a revolutionary war.
Now that's a bombshell.
Army League still doesn't know how to do it. And I've, in many discussions in Dhaka, I have said so, and I'll repeat it here. Had the East Bengal Regiment and the East Pakistan Rifles not revolted, there would be no liberation war. The Pakistan army would have taken control of all of East Pakistan.
Now,
The
other
army
important
leaders
thing- Okay,
the
please
army
continue.
leaders would have escaped to India, and then what would have happened, I don't know. But the liberation war occurred because Bengali soldiers revolted. Bengali soldiers of the East Bengal Regiment and the Bengali soldiers of the East Pakistan Rifles revolted. And whatever one may say, I think we have very brave people. Our people are people of the Delta. They fight with nature all their lives, and they fight equally hard in battle.
And in politics.
The politics is something else.
Right now, let me get my pressing question. Is that Sheikh Mujib tried to neutralize leftist insurgent? So was I think Indira Gandhi. This I got from Dr. Jangrullah as well. That the leftist, the armed money which came from buying arms from my place in England in the 70s was stopped by Indira Gandhi. So that doesn't go to the leftist, including the CPM and the Naxalbari. So that how did that was tackled? Why the leftists were thwarted?
Okay, let me take this question after I say something to you. This
Please
is
do.
not in my book. This is not in my book.
No, you mentioned
I
about
can-
the Mujib
No,
was trying to
hold on. Give me
neutralize
a minute.
leftist
Give me a minute.
insurgency.
No, I will come to that. I will come to that. But before that, I want to make an important point.
Please do.
There is a Pakistani general who was the chief of the general staff. His name is Gul Hassan. Gul Hassan was the chief of the general staff. I don't mention this book because I laid my hands on Gul Hassan's book after I wrote my book. And I have to put this in. Somewhere in the month of August, a Pakistani military delegation went to China. The military delegation was led by Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. And Gul Hassan was the senior military officer in the delegation. So however these delegations go, they met military men, etc., etc. And the last meeting they had with Zhou Enlai. Zhou Enlai is the Chinese premier. And I think Bhutto was the leader of the delegation and was making the case that how Indians are, trying to tear up Pakistan, and Pakistan military needs weapons and ammunition. Zhou Enlai is like a Mandarin diplomat. He said that, we have given you weapons to defend your country, but not to use it on your own people. This I should have mentioned in my book. So
Nice.
Pakistan did not get the weapons that it expected to get from China. So I think you will see that whatever we may have, I had wrong impressions about China's role in 71. And but it is actually when I read Gul Hassan's book, my views changed. Now coming to the questions that you were raising. In 1972, there was the Purbo Bangla Sarbohara Party and Purbo Bangla Communist Party. In the certain districts in certain areas of Naugai in Rajshahi and Pabna, they started an armed insurrection. And it was, because by then, hunger was creeping in those districts. People were dying hungry. So they had some weapons. They went and they were from well-to-do village homesteads that had rice stalks. They were taking control of those rice stalks and distributing rice to those who didn't have food. And Mujib's core was threatened by it.
Got it.
Mujib scored because it was the kind of stuff that puts the government of a vulnerable government in very. So the army was sent after them.
Right. Now,
the-
before I forget to the next chapter, let me ask one last thing. Role of Colonel Tahir, Colonel Ziauddin, Sirajul Alam Khan, Jalil, and Mujibani, Sheikh Mudi. Again, I've thrown you all this in a melting pot. You pick and choose.
I can talk
Colonel
about any
Tahir.
one of them. Which one?
Colonel Tahir, Colonel Ziauddin is their role in the army.
Colonel Tahir, Colonel Ziauddin, General Manzoor,
Yes.
and Brigadier Patwari. They were 4 Bengali military officers who escaped from Pakistan to join the Liberation War. Okay, after the war, Ziauddin became commander of the Dhaka Brigade. Manzoor became commander of the Jasor Brigade. And Ziauddin Manzoor Tahir, because he had lost his leg, he also had a various argument, a very strong disagreement with the then army chief General Safiullah, and so he was pushed out of the army, and he was sent to the Water Development Board, and he was in charge of their speedboat division. But Tahir was very radical. Tahir, after the war, was the brigade commander in Kumilla, and he started an experiment that we are a revolutionary people's army, and we must not be a burden on the people of Bangladesh. So he said, this is cantonment, our land. We have all this land. We will grow our own food. We will not ask the government for food. So traditional military officers resented these ideas.
But Lipschutz wrote very nicely in his last testament of Tahir. He detailed the detailed plans there. You must have read Lipschutz. You must have read Lipschutz.
Oh, yes, yes.
He documented quite a lot.
Yes, I've read Lipschutz, and Lipschutz has interviewed me twice.
Okay.
And today, which is romantically termed as the nucleus. And so they had some discussion sessions, and it was resolved that the only way the people of East Pakistan will get their full rights was if East Pakistan were to become independent. And also, I think they were, I think, president of Chhatru League around 1962-63. In 1966, Mujib announced the 6 points in Lahore. Mujib was not the president of Awami League at that time. He was a senior member, and Abdul Rashid Tarkobagish was the president of Awami League. And following this, there was a clash within the Awami League, and the Chhatru League backed Mujib. And Mujib replaced Tarkobagish as the president of Awami League.
Okay.
So they were very close. They were very close to Mujib. Mujib's muscle within the Awami League came from the Chhatru League. Point number 1. Point number 2, after the liberation, Sirajul Alam Khan and Sheikh Fazlul Haq Moni parted ways. And those who were loyal to Sheikh Fazlul Haq Moni, they were absorbed within the Roki Bahini. And Sirajul Alam Khan split and created Jashod.
Super. Now, I'm just hiding because we've got last 10 minutes to the last chapter, and then, of course, the clever contribution done by professors. The one which I missed was the role of Bhashwani, which I will not talk now, but let's come to the final Bangladesh chapter. Sheikh Mujib as Bangabandhu, charismatic politician, pressure and the pressure from pro-Pakistani classes, Al-Badr Shams, Mushtaq Tajuddin friction, and the collaborators, Tito's Yugoslavia suggestion rejected by Mujib. So again, I'm giving a starter triggers. You start talking on these.
I will be very brief. I will make one,
Please.
and I will draw an analogy with the student movement that happened recently in Bangladesh. I'm
Thank you.
very pleased. I'm very pleased that the students have, after bringing down Hasina's government, has not handed over their power to their elders. That's what we did in after 71.
Excellent.
We shouldn't have done that. We shouldn't
Great.
have done that. And that Mujib was heading to a disaster. The other revolutionary leaders of the time were watching it. The other revolutionary leaders of the time were watching it. In the first Independence Day celebration in 1972, the Yugoslav president Joseph Tito came to Dhaka. It so happened that I was selected to be his military police escort.
Wonderful.
So I was Tito's military police escort. But Tito came to Dhaka to have a one-to-one conversation with Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. And what the message that Tito wanted to get across to Mujib was that you are making a huge mistake. You are making a huge mistake because everybody around you is not a freedom fighter. Everybody around you is somebody who served the Pakistanis during the period of your liberation war. And these people will invariably let you down. So Mujib wanted to justify his actions, saying, oh, but they're the ones who are experienced. And Tito said, what experience? The experience they have had is they got defeated. And because of them, you will be defeated. You take these freedom fighters with you, they will make mistakes, and they will learn from their mistakes, and they will do what you want them to do. But Mujib never
That's the
listened
analogy
to
you're
me.
trying to make with the present situation, are you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mujib heard the same advice when in 1974 he visited Cuba. Fidel Castro told him the same thing.
Did he?
So I am personally very optimistic now that the students are at the helm of affairs and they are not leaving it to their elders to make policy. They are going to make the policy. And that, I think, is the bright spot of this so-called second independence.
All right, you've still got 5 minutes, so I would still like to use one important thing. Quiet war between Bhutto and Mujib after Mujib was brought out from the jail. You want to mention anything about that? You did say in the book.
No, I think that's been said. I think I would rather have Sadek and Iman ask me questions.
All right. And then the other interesting part I found the cronyism among Army League, where the Gora Bahini was dearming. There was a matter. I think I will.
There's a lot about the cronyism that I observed in the book. Cronyism is cronyism. But maybe these two gentlemen should ask me questions. They've been quiet for the entire time.
Well, before I do that, I bought this nice hat from Vietnam for you to give you a wonderful salute.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
So the ball is in Sadikul and Imamur's hand. Thank you so much. I'm really obliged.
Thank you. I had, I'm glad I was able to do this.
The only thing I would say, you might get a sticking question from Imam. It could be a sting in the tail for you. I'm just warning you before. Go on, fire away, boys.
Okay. Actually, I must say I enjoyed reading your book. In fact, this is one of the books I had to finish reading in one night because I couldn't stop reading. And I'll have to give you more salutes than Taslim did because you have liberated an area of Bangladesh where I was born, Chapai-Nawabganj.
Wow.
In your book, I find so many characters, so many places which are quite known to me. And I'll have to ask one or two questions right away before I say anything. On 16th December, there was a kind of makeshift headquarters of the Mukti Bahini in Chapai-Nawabganj. Were you present on that day there?
That was our headquarters.
Most likely, then I have seen you at least because I went to that
That was
headquarters.
our headquarters. That
Yeah.
was we entered if you were in Chapai-Nawabganj town that day, when
Mhm.
we entered, people came out.
Yes. So
So maybe
suddenly
you
I
were
heard that
I looked
Badr,
very different, of course.
so Badr Rashid, I heard that he's one of those.
He was there.
So
He was there.
I went to that headquarters. I obviously I was overjoyed to see Badr Rashid. Then
Yes,
next
this was
question,
EPCF headquarters.
yeah. Then who was the overall commander of the Mukti
At
Bahini?
that time, Major Gyas had come from Lalgola.
So he actually, I was only 18 or 19 years old, like you, and he invited me to have lunch there with Bazlur Rashid. Most
for you.
likely, then I saw you. But anyway, there are a lot of connections between your story and my story. I'll make it very brief. So, as probably you know, we studied at Rajshakhar College with Taslim, and then I got admission in the economics department of Dhaka University. Then we got an inter-wing scholarship. So I went to Lahore. It was at the time a prestigious institution. Lahore, as we know, was always an epicenter of Pakistani politics. So,
You went to Punjab University.
no, Lahore College, government college.
Lahore Government College, yes.
Yeah. And possibly you may know Allama Iqbal, Professor Salam, then another guy who got a Nobel Prize later, Dr. Khurana. They all studied at Lahore Government College. So anyway, we were there only for 3 months in Lahore. And the story is quite interesting. There are so many stories here, I'll tell you. Number one, probably in February in 1971, at the time, our adjutant, Punjabi adjutant from Rajshakhar College, he was posted at Lahore cantonment. He used to invite us quite often. One day, suddenly, we were inside the Lahore cantonment. He said, that was in February 1971. Suddenly he said, gentlemen, I tell you something, East Pakistan soon is going to be an independent country. We were just stunned. I mean, if his boss would know this, I mean, he would be court-martial, isn't it?
He was a Pathan, I think he was a Pathan.
The Punjabi, Khaled Adib.
Yeah.
So my guess is that possibly he could easily anticipate what was going to happen. This is one question I would like to raise.
Yes, let me just interject a small point.
Mhm.
I later found out in January from Brigadier Majumdar's book. Brigadier Majumdar is a Bengali brigadier who was the commandant of East Bengal Regimental Center.
Mhm.
From Brigadier Majumdar's book that in January, a top secret letter was sent to all senior officers of the Pakistan Army, meaning brigadiers and above, that if Awami League takes control of the Pakistan government, it would change the basic structure of Pakistan, and therefore Awami League shall never be allowed to form a government in Pakistan.
Exactly.
So I
I'm
think your adjutant may
Mhm.
have had an inkling of that letter, and he was probably, he could understand what that would mean for Pakistan.
And because he spent quite a few years in East Pakistan, he knew that this intervention by Pakistan Army would not succeed. That was his, and he was right, of course, in hindsight. Now, uh, when you
After
are
that gentleman left, Captain Rashid became the adjutant, and he was
Yes.
an officer in our sector and a
My
person with
neighbor.
whom I was very close. And he was a person with whom I was very, very close.
He was my neighbor in Kalabagan too.
so
Okay,
I'll lead
yeah,
you
he's from Palabag.
to lead you to your question, but before that, I would like to mention some incidents. When in the classroom, probably it was a math class in Lahore Government College, the medium of instruction was English. And so the teacher started lecturing in Urdu. Then he saw some of us. He knew that there were some students from East Pakistan. He was a gentleman. He asked, "Is there anybody who does not understand Urdu?" So I stood up and said, "I don't understand Urdu." And there are other few students. Immediately, Punjabi students, they were, "Oh, why don't you understand Urdu?" So that was my first experience in Pakistan. Another time when you're walking along the streets, some guys they're riding, they're in a bus, they're yelling, "Hey, Bengali Babu." They used to say, I don't know whether you know that, they think that all Bengalis are converted, from Hindus, so they are not really pure Muslims. So they,
And even if they were, so what?
so then another time when we're walking, we're in a store, one Punjabi, possibly he was a businessman, he had some business in Dhaka, then he asked us that, "Are you from East Pakistan?" I said, "Yes." Then he started vilifying, all sorts of nasty things about Bengalis. He said, he yelled, "You want independence?" He took out a piece of paper. "You get it. You have it." So that from then on, I felt strongly that this is a foreign land for us. I never felt comfortable. There are good people, I must say. So I managed to convince 3 or 4 of us that let's get out of this place. And it was clear to us Pakistan wouldn't survive and should not survive. So we left Pakistan, guess what, on 23rd March. Possibly that was maybe the last day of PIA, Pakistan International Airlines. Anyway, so when we landed in Dhaka, it was clear to us that we took the right decision. So this is the question for you. Still, I don't know. It was clear to me that this country, as I say, would not survive and should not survive. But how come, and you said in your book that the discussion between Mujib and Pakistani generals Yahya and Bhutto, it was a ploy. Why couldn't Mujib anticipate this? I know, as you say, he was not a revolutionary leader. He was not a guerrilla leader like Ho Chi Minh or Fidel Castro. But still, I think it was possible to capture Dhaka airport and Chittagong port. That, I think, could have been done. Now, I know there are possibly two answers. Mujib was not a revolutionary leader. He followed constitutional politics. So it was a dilemma for him. That's one thing. I have heard that he thought that kind of action would lead to massive killings. Pakistani soldiers would retaliate and all that from their barracks and so on. What is your own gut feeling? Don't you think it was possible to prevent the inflows of Pakistani soldiers by simply capturing the Dhaka airport and Chittagong port?
Gentlemen,
I think
before
both of your points are valid.
Okay, can I just gently remind that we have crossed the time, so maybe 10 minutes for the extended time, please.
Okay.
please take.
Well, I'll be very brief. I think both of your points are valid. The second point is what Awami League has been saying for the last 52 years, that had Mujib not surrendered, they would do a massacre in Dhaka. But my response to that is they did the massacre in Dhaka anyway.
Anyway, exactly.
They did the massacre in Dhaka anyway. But I think what I found very revealing is in Brigadier Majumdar's book. Brigadier Majumdar reveals that when he discovered the top secret letter that I mentioned to you, that Yahya Khan had sent top secret letters to brigadiers and above, that Awami League shall not be allowed to form a government. Brigadier Majumdar in Chittagong, Lieutenant Colonel M.R. Chaudhary and Ziaur Rahman, but led by Brigadier Majumdar. Brigadier Majumdar immediately conveyed this to General Osmani. And Brigadier Majumdar had offered a plan that Chittagong cantonment, there are not many Pakistani soldiers. Between the East Bengal Regiment, the EPR, we can take control. He offered a plan to Osmani, and he asked Osmani to get sanction from Mujib. He never received a response. Majumdar tried to contact Osmani several times. So what it tells me is Mujib didn't want the military to be associated with anything. He didn't want the Bengali soldiers but then the irony is, had the Bengali soldiers not revolted, there would be no liberation war.
True. Now I can see my chief and producer Imamur is signaling me, and he has got a tricky question to ask.
Okay.
Imamur, go ahead.
Kayum sir, I'm from Dinajpur, and I also somewhat felt the connection of places of Chapai Nawabganj, the greater Uttar Bongo, that I read from the details that you mentioned in your book. And I must say that today I felt really goosebumps while I listened to your talk. Definitely it left a lasting impression on me, and it's not often that people from our generation we encounter such a thought-provoking and engaging discussions regarding liberations. But very humbly and respectfully, I would like to know your perspective, or I'd rather say your views on how we remember and interpret the liberation war history, like as of now today in 2024. So please don't take it personally, but with my, maybe you could say, I can term it in this way, my growing academic interest or sensibilities or curiosities. So I'm always eager to understand the broader narratives in a very unbiased way, perhaps to explore the diverse perspective for different ways to interpret the complex or the contested side of what constitutes our memories. So I think history is very multivocal, and it encompasses different voices, the multiple voices, the narratives, the perspectives, and everything. So it's a collection of diverse, contesting, and often those are the conflicting narratives that emerges from different human experiences, sir. So primarily, my question is about the persecution of the Bihari communities. So it's a topic that's not mentioned in your book. Like I can say reference from Uttar Bongo in Bogura Shantahar, like thousands of Biharis were killed there. I don't know, some references say that it's probably by the Bengalis, but I really don't know about the underlying histories of it. So I just want to know what's your views or your perspective on this. So do you think this event is somewhat very much underrepresented in the mainstream narrative of liberation, where maybe we are primarily putting our focuses on the Pakistani army itself, but there's another light that could be shed upon in this gray area. So What do you think, sir?
I think you have two questions here. One is about the history, which is the big and the Bihari question. Let me take the Bihari question first because it is easier to answer. There have been, even in my book, I talk about Bihari atrocities. Why I don't talk much about it
Yes.
is because I did not witness any. Okay, but then I knew it was happening. Okay, there is one incident I mentioned in my book that once we go to Rajshahi and I am sent to the Bihari neighborhood. I'm sent to the Bihari neighborhood because the locals ask that they want protection. I go there and I find there is not a single male, no male person, only women and children. And the males have gone away because of fear. And I saw these women and I looked into their eyes and they were all expecting to be, you know, become rape victims. So there was a DSP of Rajshahi. And I said, what do? We don't have the men to protect so many women. It's a big area. So the DSP was an old man. He said, একটা কাজ করতে পারেন। এদেরকে নিয়ে জেলখানায় নিয়ে রাখি, কেউ ওদের কাছে যেতে পারবে না। তারপর যখন জিনিস ঠান্ডা হয়ে যাবে তখন ওদেরকে বাইর করে নিয়ে আসবো। So it took us whole night to take all these women and children to Rajshahi jail. And we kept them in jail for 2 to 3 weeks. In jail, they were fed. They had a place to stay, and there was nothing. So the threat that you talk about is very real. There has been, I know of certain incidents in Kishoreganj. I've heard about Shantahar. After the liberation war, I was in Saidpur, and there I have heard stories. Okay, so I did not write about it because I did not witness it firsthand.
Dibu, also in Khalishpur, Khulna.
Huh?
Khulna, Khalishpur also there was atrocity.
Oh, yes. The question about history, I think that is the more interesting question for me. You know that the last government had passed a law called the Liberation War History Act, which said there can be only this version of history and nothing else. Now, I think, we have really, our government has contributed to historical methodology by passing this act. So, I mean, you can only have whatever the government says, that's history. Everything else is out. So when I wrote this book, a lot of people told me they're going to come after you. I said, don't worry, Awami League doesn't read English. I said, Awami League doesn't read English. And actually, nobody came after me. So that's one. But I think the more important, in the political propaganda of the Hasina government, its biggest capital was the Liberation War and their version of the Liberation War. That's why that act, that's why also, you see, during the Liberation War, I think there were something between 80 to 85,000 freedom fighters. And that included the military men. Now, Hasina started this Notun Mukti Joddhar Talika Korte Hobe. Who will authenticate this Talika? The Thana Command Council of the Mukti Joddha Porishad. Did the Thana Command Council exist in 1971? No, it didn't. So this was an effort to make Mukti Joddha a propaganda weapon for the Awami League. And therefore the law. So the narrative of the Liberation War has become a space of political contest. That's my answer to your question.
Super now.
And I think it will now end.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I just want to, Taslim.
Please go ahead, Salihul. Please go ahead.
I just mentioned one thing. In the former Soviet Union, frequently history was changed depending on which regime is in power. So there was a joke. Russians used to say that our past is more unpredictable than our future.
So yes, I think that is beautifully stated. Absolutely marvelous.
Okay, now I'm closing the show, but I want the stick to have a nasty question to you as well. Deepu, you did mention about Osmani came slightly negative light to your book, and there is no mention of Dr. Jafrullah. Because
Because in 71 I did not come across him. I talk about the doctors that I have come across. I didn't come across Dr. Zafrullah in 1971.
And you had some negative comments about Osmani as well.
I thought he was yes. I think I have a whole paragraph. You need to go and read that. I have nothing good to say about. I have nothing good to say about him. He was an incompetent man.
It can be contested, is it? Because there are other views. That's why I'll bring it to you. Well, that is it.
I mean, you know, he was the general. I am the second lieutenant, and I'm calling him incompetent. This must be something wrong with me.
আপনাকে আরেকটা প্রশ্ন করতে চাই, because I didn't get the answer. I don't know whether you know that. আমার খালাতো ভাই, he was also fighting in Chapai-Nawabganj. He was a brilliant student from now BUET at the time, engineering college or whatever. Now he was killed. যতদূর আমি জানি, he was killed not by the Pakistan army but a rival group. He belonged to a left-wing group. তার নামে একটা চাঁপাইনবাবগঞ্জে হল আছে, ওর নিকনেম হচ্ছে সাটু হল. I don't know whether do you have any memory of a man or a boy called Satu?
Brother, all this happened 55 years ago. My memory fails me. My memory fails me, but এটা এবং যদি আপনি যেটা বললেন, এরকম খুন খামারি কিন্তু মুজিব বাহিনী করছে, বামপন্থী মুক্তিযোদ্ধাদের মুজিব বাহিনী খুন করছে।
মোস্ট লাইকলি এটা আমাদের ধারণা আর কি। বাই দ্য ওয়ে, আমি একটা আর্টিকেল লিখেছিলাম বেসড অন মাই অবজারভেশন ইন পাকিস্তান, ওটা হয়তো আমি সার্কুলেট করতে পারি। bdnews24.com আমি এটা আমার মানে অবজারভেশনগুলো লিখেছিলাম, ইনক্লুডিং মাই অবজারভেশন ইন কুষ্টিয়া and Chapai-Nawabganj and Lahore. Anyway, it was very interesting to read your book. Before I say anything, আমাদের ম্যাগাজিন যেটা আছে, I will invite you to write something for the December issue. It will be quite appropriate on the occasion of the Victory Day. Either you can summarize your book or you can focus on your experience in Chapai-Nawabganj and so on. I will urge you to write. আমি আমাদের ম্যাগাজিনের ইয়েটা রেফারেন্সটা আপনাকে দিয়ে দেব। এই ম্যাগাজিনে কিন্তু অনেকে লিখেছে, ইনক্লুডিং রহমান সোবহান, যে সিপিডি চেয়ারম্যান, based on his account of the events at the time in March 71, and আরো অনেকে। So I would invite you to write something for our magazine.
Inshallah. Okay. I'm getting too many calls. Too many calls.
Just one public announcement. Since things are hotting up, that none of us here have got any political affinity to anybody, and I'm sure Dr. Khan also hasn't. So with that disclaimer, we'd like to come to a wonderful meeting, and Imamul will get this into YouTube soon for everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And once again, last salute to you.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Hasta la victoria siempre.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
I wish you all the best. Taslim, stay in good health.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum and good evening.
Wa alaikum salam.
Okay.